Hey guys, it's Coach Brian here, Precision Boxing MMA. And what I wanted to do today was talk about my longtime friend and student, Erik Andren, who unfortunately, we lost him over the weekend. And just wanted to get some thoughts out about him, something that we can all think of and smile when memories of Erik come to our mind. So I can remember I met Erik probably around 2011, 2012. He actually knew some friends of mine that I went to high school with growing up. And I guess he was always a big mixed martial arts fan. And he decided to get into jiu-jitsu. And right away, the immediate impression that Erik left on me, and what I always think of when I think of Erik, is enthusiasm. He was immediately gung-ho about jiu-jitsu. He wrote me this long message after his first week there about how much he appreciated it and how excited he was. And it's funny in jiu-jitsu, sometimes they'll almost mock the person that gets really enthusiastic right out the gate. And I never agreed with that. Whenever someone has a lot of enthusiasm for jiu-jitsu, I always felt like we should just encourage it, because you never know when those people are going to stick with it. And it's a fire, and if we can fuel that fire, it'll be great. And Erik's fire never burned out. It was always burning very, very bright. Every single class, he was there with a huge smile on his face. He became like everybody's best friend at the gym. And I can remember one of my friends, Trevor Shaw, he convinced me to start 6 a.m. classes, which was a pain in the butt for me because at the time I was living at the gym and I didn't want anyone to know. And in a weird way, it made me hate Erik, because everyone would come in at 6 a.m. while I was in my office/bedroom. And Erik was so excited. Hey, man, how you doing? Oh, my God, that's such a great move. Man, can you believe what happened last night? I was like, would this guy shut up? Because he would always wake me up. But that's just how Erik was. He had this enthusiasm that spread to everybody. And man, on the mats, the guy became a killer. And I always say that the real testament, not anybody, but the average person can really make it a blue belt. But if you can make it a purple belt, that's really something. And Erik had a demanding job. He was a federal agent. He had 2 kids. He had every excuse in the world not to train. And that guy took none of them. And he gave absolutely everything he had every single time. And it was like, if he couldn't beat you, man, he was going to make you sweat while you beat him. And I could remember he had so much enthusiasm specifically for judo. And I had an opportunity to train with this Romanian judo instructor. And the guy was so weird. There were no bathrooms in the gym we would use. He would make us pee in a mason jar. And he would tell us stories that I can't even really repeat in the company of children. The guy was so weird, but Erik would come with me. I'd be like, hey, man, I'm meeting this guy here. I think we did it on like a Wednesday night. And it was like we had this small group of guys, and he was just so happy to be there. And the instructor was very blunt, and he would like kind of insult Erik without Erik even realizing it. He would say something like, this throw that you do would be better if you did it right. And Erik would just smile and be like, hey, man, I'm trying. And that was just how he was. He was a guy who took everything in stride and always put a positive spin on things. And he became such an asset to the gym in a bunch of ways. A lot of times, we have a huge gym, and it's easy for people to sometimes, fall through the cracks if they maybe miss a class or two. And sometimes I would be thinking, man, I got to get in touch with this person. I would find out Erik had already been talking to him for weeks, trying to get them back on the mat. And I mean, he used to have social events at his house all the time. In addition to being really good at judo and jiu-jitsu, he was an incredible cook. He would have smoked meats. And at the time, I was a vegetarian, so he would always have grilled vegetables for me, and would make sure that he was the only one not making fun of me for eating celery and peppers instead of chicken and steak. And it was the same thing. Anything he did, he was so excited about. I remember we were watching the UFC once, and I think it was Rose Namajunas knocked out Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And he jumps up and down and he's screaming, oh my God, oh my God. And his wife says to him, Erik, you're going to wake up the neighbors. And he goes, they need to hear this. I don't care. And so he kept that childlike enthusiasm in everything he did. And another thing about Erik was an opinionated guy. And, as tough as he was on the mat, he used to say it was nothing compared to how tough he was behind the keyboard. And sometimes he would be inflammatory, and I would get into it with him. But one thing I always appreciated was, number one, we could have a rational discussion. We could disagree vehemently, but didn't ever affect our friendship. When I saw him off the mat, we were still good friends, and he could have his views and I could have mine, and we could agree to disagree and still be friends, which is something that I always respected about Erik. And then the other big thing that I think of when I think of Erik is I just think of him being such a great father. He was always so proud of his girls, and I used to see them running around the house, and then eventually he brought them into precision, and they became students of mine. And such remarkable girls, so disciplined, so kind, so attentive. And I can remember a lot of times when you have siblings, you got to keep them separated because if they're on the mat, they can never work together. It was the opposite for Annika and Livia. They worked together great. And I can remember one of them got promoted before the other one. And generally when that happens, one sibling's angry and upset and stomping their feet. But what happened was, and I was like, in getting a stripe today, is Olivia. And Annika, her eyes brightened up and she started clapping. She hugged her sister. And I could remember going to Erik and being like, man, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because your girls are amazing. And he would never even take the credit. He would always deflect it and give it back to them, say, you know, they're just so great. I'm so blessed to have them. Or he would talk about how great his wife is. And that was Erik. He never wanted to be the center of attention on things. He never wanted to take the credit for anything, but he always wanted to help. I can remember when he got in the advanced class, one of the things he would do is he would take the techniques and almost in secret, he would gather all the new white belts, maybe some of the annoying white belts that would ask, you know, the same question over and over again and show up with their gi pants backwards and their belt tied in bunny ears. He'd be like, hey, come here. Don't tell coach I showed you this. And he would start giving his own little seminar helping these guys out. And on the one hand, I was like, hey, man, those are the advanced techniques. But eventually I was like, you know what? Even if they're not ready for these moves enough, them knowing that they've got a higher belt that's taking them under their wing is going to help everybody. So I always let them do it. And I was always so excited when I saw it. And, you know, the end is never pretty when someone gets sick. And Erik was very sick and more sick than he ever let on. He let all of us know, I'm going to be back on the mat. I just saw him at the, in Jesse, maybe 3 months ago, I saw him at the summer barbecue. And he was assuring me that he was going to get back to training and that he couldn't wait to be back and that the worst was behind him. And although maybe that wasn't necessarily reality, I'm always comforted by the fact that he chose to take that mentality of being a fighter and persevering. And although we don't have him on the mat, and although we're going to miss him, we'll always have his spirit here. I just want to tell him I love him.